Shame. We don't talk anymore. We don't talk anymore.
Hi guys, welcome to Truth Talkin Thursday. This is Jim. I'm Jane. And I've been reading a book lately on effective communication. And the book is called Point and Grunt. The title actually really enticed me. I believe I got it through the leadership program that I've been involved with. And I guess I felt like I really needed some inspiration on effective communication. You know, sometimes situations occur in our lives and it becomes apparent that the way we are communicating, or even what we are communicating, is causing someone else to react. And I think that it's really interesting to me how we all have different buttons that get pushed that it's almost like we have no control over the reaction. It's just like boom, like tick, 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 boom kind of deal. And I think it's interesting to me how effective communication is something that we really should all practice regularly so that it becomes a habit. So my question for you, Jim, is what would you say is the most important thing about effective communication to you? What is the most important thing about communicating effectively?
Wow. And you just sprung that on me now.
I did.
The most, I don't know that there's one particular thing, but there certainly are two or three that stand out in my mind. I think one of them is sincerity. I mean, you have to have a real desire to communicate with somebody and understand sort of the principles of communicating. I mean, why do we try to communicate in the first place? Why don't we just smash each other and drag out the loser? And
which means, from what you just said, we need to know what we think.
Well, we need to understand that other people have a right to think differently than we do.
For sure, but if we're going to communicate, you said we need to be sincere, and I agree with that. Ergo, if you're going to be sincere, the only way to be sincere is to know what you actually really think.
I think the other thing is trying to why do we want to communicate to one another? Is it to gain something? Is it to explain something? Is it to get permission to do something? Is it? I mean, what is the point of the effort to communicate with other people?
So know your why kind of deal.
Well, know your why. I mean, because it depends. Your why depends on your approach. So they attempt to communicate in different situations in different ways, but it's always to get something. And I think if that's
Jim, is that the reason?
If that's your thing, I think the effort to communicate at that point is already flawed.
Would you say that's why most of us communicate, to get something? Is that normally a reason?
I don't think so. I mean, it certainly is part of the reason some of the time. I mean, we're human. I mean, we...
So can you give an example of what? What are we looking to get when we communicate?
Well, it's something that pleases us, something that we feel we need, something that's important to us, something, a way of explaining something to somebody so that they understand why I said what I did, or I did what I did, or why I'm going to be late, or... You know, like it's a way of explaining. It's a way of not being nice to each other, but it's a way of being cordial. It's a way of being friendly. It's a way of being warm, and it's a way of saying, you know, I care for you, or I care about you, or, I mean, why does screaming at kids never work? Well,
yeah.
One of the things that happens there is the kid says, yeah, you know, you tell me on one hand that you love me, and on the other hand you're screaming like a banshee at me, and it's hard to really take you seriously. You know, so the next time you're trying to be nice to me, I'm thinking, what's going on here? I'm getting set up here.
Yeah.
And so it's really important for the person who's trying to communicate what their goal is, why they want to do this. Why they're saying what they're saying, and they're saying it as they are saying it. I mean, if it's not true to who you are, it's going to be transparent as hell.
Mm-hmm. The thing that keeps popping into my mind, and this could be a little off the mark from what we're talking about, But maybe it's just a lesson that I need to learn right now. What keeps coming up to me as I'm reading through this book is that one of the things I need to practice before I communicate is to listen. Often, there's a saying, and it's written way more eloquently than how I'm going to state it right now, but there's a saying that says something like, most of us communicate with the intent to either solve something or answer something, provide a solution. We don't communicate. When somebody tells us something, when somebody is communicating, our listening is already forming a response instead of actually listening to what that person is saying, start to finish, before we let our mind just take off on its little rampage. And I'm guilty of that for sure. I know that. My mind is just a squirrel of a whirlwind half the time.
But you're aware of it, and that's important. That's the important thing, is you're aware of what you're doing. Now you can do something to change the way you go about that opportunity to talk to somebody or communicate with somebody. Most people aren't, and most people are doing exactly what you're saying. If I'm already thinking about how I'm going to respond, I'm not hearing what's being said.
Exactly.
And if you can't hear what's being said, then how are you going to respond? In a way that the other person is hoping or looking for. So.
And isn't that right there what you just described? The breakdown of communication, usually in most instances, it's because we're doing our own thing instead of listening to what's being said for whatever reason it is. And there's nothing wrong with it. It just happens. But in order to fix something, both people have to listen, actually have to hear what's being said, and to validate each other. Somebody told me that recently. Repeat back what is being said to you. Paraphrase it. Pick out the most important thing and say it.
So what I'm
I'm sorry, Jim.
No, that's all right. So what I'm hearing you say is, or from what I'm getting from your conversation, from what you're saying to me is, and you feed that back. And that's that. You're so right with that. It's really important because the other person feels like they're actually being heard.
Exactly.
The whole part of that whole communication thing is, I want to be heard. I got something important to say, and I want to be heard.
Yeah.
And if you can't prove that you're hearing, then that's a problem. The other part of this, and I get this from couples and partners and stuff in relationships, is basically, you never let me finish a sentence. And there's nothing more frustrating than being interrupted halfway through a thought or what. I don't care how boring it is to the other person or whatever, but give me a chance to start and finish a particular thought, and then when I'm stopped, then I will give you exactly the same opportunity. I will not interrupt. I will sit here and listen. I will feed back to you, and I will give you a chance to complete your thought so that I can respond to that in an appropriate manner. And when you don't have that chance to finish a thought, that's when the fur flies.
I feel like what you just said is one of the most important tools of communication. The willingness to hear and be heard. That is effective communication. Right. You have to hear both sides. So that means you have to listen without forming opinions. And effective communication means someone else is willing to hear you. And that's where solutions happen then.
Right.
Because you're actually both hearing each other, and you can move forward from that point, even if it's just to agree to disagree. Ultimately, what is the most important? It isn't what you're arguing about. It's the relationship that you have with that person. That's what's worth preserving, and that's what's worth it to listen and to be heard. That's the bottom line.
It is. It really is.
It's fine to take time to think.
Absolutely.
It's fine to take a break, to back off, to cool down, to whatever words you want to put on it. But ultimately, the greatest tool in any relationship is communication, I believe. And as I said, I feel that communication is all about listening, and what follows listening is hearing and being heard.
And what we need to do is we need to understand who we're talking to. I process information as a male in the world much differently than Jane does as a female in the world.
So have a great week, everybody.
Thanks for stopping by.